Hello, everyone. Welcome to Paranormal Roundtable. I'm your host, Josh Turner. We call it PRT, and they call me Wolf, and we call our listeners the Paratroopers. I didn't make any of those names up, actually. Those were all that were chosen. Paranormal Roundtable is the name of the show, and so for short, we call it PRT. A lot of people are like, what is PRT? Why do you call it that? Whenever somebody sends me a message, I ask them, are you a listener of PRT? I'll have to tell them Paranormal Roundtable. And, oh, okay, yes, I am. So if you send me a friend request on Facebook, and if you want to be friends on Instagram under Josh Turner 940, not Josh Turner 940 is my Instagram, make sure that you specify that you're a listener of Paranormal Roundtable or PRT so that I can add you. We do have many groups on Facebook. We have Paranormal Roundtable, Paranormal Lounge, Paranormal Encounters, Paranormal Truckers Podcast, Dogman Werewolf Discussion, Quad Coalition of Sciences, and those are all good friends of ours. And there are a couple of national North American Dogman Project groups that I'm in too, that I admin. And so I'm associated and affiliated with a lot of different people in this community, the paranormal/cryptid community. And so, yeah. That being said, if you would like to help with the show, you can do a Patreon, and we now have a $3, $5, $10, and $20 tier on the Patreon. And so if anybody's interested in doing that, we will put that up on the show, the links to it on every show. And we do have a store. We do sell merchandise of all kinds, and that's shirts, hoodies, all kinds of stuff. We do a giveaway every week, and one of the things we do is we drop every episode, the link to every episode on our Paranormal Roundtable group on Facebook, and if you go and you leave a comment, then you're automatically entered to win an autographed book and other prizes. We do that every week, and we do a Tuesday live stream, and that starts about 7:30, 8 o'clock every Tuesday. And that's it's a YouTube exclusive. You're not going to get that if you're only listening to the Friday episodes on the podcast form. You're not going to get the Tuesday live stream. So the Tuesday live stream is between 7:30, 8 o'clock, and we do that every Tuesday. And we go for about 3 hours. So you're getting a lot of extra stories, a lot of extra content, and it's interactive. You can go on the live chat. You can talk to us through the messages, and your comments can be read, and your voice can be heard. And so if you want to listen to those episodes and you said, hey, I can't make it to the live stream, well, that's fine. You can always go back and listen to it after it posts on YouTube. That being said, I'd like to introduce my guest tonight. Do you want to say hello, Kevin?
Hello, everybody.
This is Kevin Pinay. And Kevin is going to be our guest tonight. We're going to talk about a plethora of things. Kevin has had a few experiences that he's here to talk about, and I have actually spoken to Kevin, what was it, months ago. We had a long and interesting conversation, you and your wife, Melissa, and you guys are actually Patreon supporters. And one of the things that we talked about, because I bought some shark tooth necklaces from you guys,
right.
And those are really cool. You guys, and you used to sell them, but you don't sell them so much anymore. I had a lot of people inquiring about that when I was wearing them on the show. But you guys you're not really selling them like you used to. And you
depends.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on how many I have that I can make necklaces out of.
Yeah. And a lot of them are prehistoric, right? They're fossilized.
Actually, all of them are.
All of them are.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing. They're pretty cool. I got several of them. And what I'd like to do, though, is get a megalodon tooth and then have it made into gold. I'm just kidding. I'm joking. I actually have a megalodon tooth. It's pretty big. I got a pretty big one. But I would like to get a couple more, man. Those are really cool. I mean, when I look at that thing, I think of the monster that it must have belonged to.
Josh, I actually have one that is when I first dug it up, I thought it was an actual megalodon tooth.
Mm.
Since megalodon teeth are really similar to great white shark teeth because they have the serrated edges on it.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have any serrated edges. So I was like, great, what is this thing? I took it into there's actually a paleontologist that works in the museum there in Aurora. And I took it to him. He was like, dude, can you tell me what this thing is? It's like, yeah, it's a very rare one that hardly everybody finds. It's called a broad-tooth Mako.
Wow.
So when you look at, usually when we look at the teeth and how we extrapolate the body size of what the shark was, we take measurement of the tooth, just the bottom, just the tooth itself, not the root.
Mm-hmm.
Thing is about 2 inches long.
Mm-hmm.
So you add 10 feet on to each inch. So if it's 10 feet, if it's an inch is 10 feet. If it's 2 inches, it's 10 feet.
That's interesting. So the one that I have, I'm trying to think if it's smooth or if it's serrated.
I think I'm not sure which ones I sent you. I can't remember now.
Well, the ones you sent me were really cool. They were ultra cool. But I had one in particular I really liked. But in the necklaces you did, like, you put these little. You did a really good job, folks. If Kevin, if you can get some necklaces made by them, it's a real treat. Like I got 2 or 3 of them, and I took one that you sent me, and it was just the tooth, and I put it onto a gold chain, and I wear it sometimes. That one's really cool, but it's my favorite one. But sometimes people will, at a glance, will look and think they're arrowheads, and I'm like, no, these are shark teeth, and they're like, oh, cool.
I have a shark tooth that I bought back in 1989 when I was in Key West, Florida. I went to the aquarium there and I bought a shark tooth, and it was a prehistoric one. And when I was working at Lowe's, there's this lady that came in. But, oh, what a nice, cool arrowhead. I was like, it's not an arrowhead, it's a shark tooth. And there was some discussion that it was a arrowhead, and she was arguing that point. It's like, it's not an arrowhead, it's a shark tooth. So yeah, they do represent them quite a bit, and actually, I know in Hawaii, they actually did use great white shark teeth to line their weapons with.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the clubs and their stuff like that, they used to take shark teeth and put them on there, and that's what they used to fight each other with.
Yeah, and because it's an island, and that would make sense. And can you imagine, though, having to go out and find those teeth? I mean, that's the thing that scares me.
The easiest way is to actually buy one, but I mean, that's you're going to pay upwards of $200-300, sometimes even more than that, just for a tooth.
Yeah.
But the other way to get it, besides how we get it, is we dig it up through under the ground. But there's other ways to do it too, and the other way to do it is actually dive for it. There's actually a place off in North Carolina. They actually dive for these things.
No, man, that's what I'm saying. You're going to have to go out into the ocean, in Hawaii, and dive for those. So those warriors would go out there and dive for those shark teeth. And they would actually catch the sharks. They would catch them and kill them, and then take the shark and take the teeth.
Yeah.
Wow, and catching great whites has got to be. Oh my gosh, I can only imagine.
The thing about the great white is, I've only recently found this out. Well, not recently, but I've actually known for a while. But they actually did travel to the islands and back and forth and everything. So I think they went to the pup. But yeah, I mean, so there are great white sharks that go to the Hawaiian Islands.
Oh yeah, it's migratory.
Yeah, they travel all the way from California and Mexico, and they'll dive down to 2,000 feet down, and they'll cruise along there, come up, and boom, they're in Hawaii.
Yeah, they go from the Sea of Cortez as like a migratory pattern. Then they bounce back. So, and there's different sets of great whites, like the ones off the coast of South Africa, the ones off the coast of New Zealand, and there's some off of Western Australia. They're all in different areas, and they are all the same species, but they're not all the same. Like some of them have the dark blue on the top, depending on the water that they cruise in. Some of them have the gray.
Right.
They're a terrifying animal.
Or something like that.
What was that?
Because if it's in shallow water, like say in Australia, if it's shallow water, they have a darker color on the. And if you're like in Guadalupe and off of California, since it's since it's deeper, you're talking 1,000 feet or more, or 200 feet or more. They actually it's actually a lighter tinge to the top of their body.
Terrifying. And the only animal on Earth that can really match them is an orca. A killer whale.
Yeah.
Killer whale is the only thing that can really stop them. I mean, and great whites know that. The great whites are terrified of killer whales, but killer whales are pretty terrifying animals in their own right. I mean, the males get up to 30 feet, just like great whites. They get up to 20 feet, and so it's just a scary animal.
I've seen like videos on YouTube or even on Facebook every once in a while. There'd be like somebody swimming, and here's an orca just like, hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
And the orca like right there. I'm like, dude, you don't see this thing? And they're like, oh yeah, hey, how you doing? And they're like, there's a guy on a kneeboard behind a boat, and he was just I guess he lost the tow line or something. The boat came back around, and he picked up the tow line, and here's this big orca like right next to him.
Yeah,
within arms.
Yeah, I had a friend that got bumped off of a board by a killer whale one time. He thinks that it was just checking him out. Like it came up and it didn't. He was thinking that if it would have been a great white, he probably would have just came up and bit him because he might have looked like a seal. But the killer whale was they're very intelligent, and it was like, what is that? So it came up from behind and nosed him, and it upended him. And then he looks and he sees this black shape, with this white on it, and he thought, oh, okay. And then he realized it was a killer whale. He saw it, but it was pretty scary.
I was actually bumped off my boogie board by a tiger shark.
Oh man, oh dude. Well, folks, that's what we're here to talk about. Actually, we're talking about all these sharks and stuff like that, and I have an interesting little story that I'm going to tell. But I want you, Kevin. You're the guest. I want you to start. We're going to talk about some stuff because Kevin's from Hawaii originally, but you live on the eastern coast of North Carolina,
North
right?
Carolina.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we're going to talk about some Hawaiian legends and stuff like that. But look, you want to get started? Let's start talking about. And you're also a squatcher. You're a Bigfoot person.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
Well, I mean, is that how you identify? I mean, you call yourself that, or what do you call yourself? A Bigfoot enthusiast, or because you said earlier squatcher, so that's why I was like
somebody who goes out and looks for Sasquatch or I don't know, whatever. Yeah. We actually do have a team, but I can't remember the name of it right now for some reason. Anyway, so what I wanted to talk about was as if everybody watches the Suicide Squad, they've seen the king shark.
Mm-hmm.
Which is actually has it has ties to Hawaiian legend, and the legend is that there was a girl on. Well, see, the thing about that is his story jumps from island to island, so it's kind of weird. But the one I know is the one he was on the Big Island. He was actually born on the Big Island, and what it was the shark god. I'll try to pronounce it so you can understand it, but it's kind of hard to do because it's Hawaiian. So the shark god of Hawaii, his name is Kamohoaliʻi, which basically just means king shark or the shark god. He visited the islands as he always does because it's his territory, and he saw a young lady by the shore one day, and he was like, "Hey, get to know you." So he transformed into a human, got with her, and they had a son. Now, they used the name Nanaue in the movie too, but that's the name that they gave the son. Now, what I remember from it was when I was in school, way back in the 70s and 80s, we used to watch films, and there was a particular film they had about the shark kid, and he was half man, half boy, half shark. And how he stood out was on his back was a shark jaw. And how he hid it was he used it was like a half cape that he used, that his mother used basically to hide him so he can, play with other kids or whatever like that.
Yeah, to try to be normal.
But, yeah, his father, the shark god, told his mother, whatever you do, don't feed him pork. Any kind of meat. Because if you do, he'll just get, he'll get more ravenous for it. He'll start like getting more dangerous, and that's all he's going to want to eat. And actually, what happened was when he was growing up, he and his friends would go to the water, but as soon as he touched the water, he transformed into a shark, and then a lot of his friends would come up missing. So, and it's I kind of like it how the DC universe uses it, but I don't like how they portrayed him in the movie.
Yeah,
but I mean,
I didn't see the movie. The story that I know is basically what you were saying. It was his mother, Kalai, or is that how you pronounce it? Kalai or Kalae, because I know there's a lot of.
Forgot what the name was, but it was something like
his mother's like Kalae or Kalai or something like that. I just remember, and then it was Nanaue was the one who. I just remember reading it a long time ago, and I think Nanaue was the one. He was the child, and the Shark King had mated with her when he came into human form because he could shapeshift.
Yeah, and
then she was told not to feed him, meat or pork or whatever it was, and then he ate it one day when he was young, and the next thing you know, he starts to go into the water, and he becomes a voracious predator, and he starts eating everything in the water, and even the fishermen were starting to go like, hey, all these the fish are starting to disappear. There weren't even other sharks because he was killing them, and then he actually started eating everything, including people, and he ate his friends. They'd all go out to swim, and then a shark would come up and his friends would go missing, and then the villagers were going like, why is Nanaue never being...
He would actually lure his friends into the water.
Into the water, yeah. He was evil, and then he would eat them.
Pretty bad guy, and the thing is about that too, is after a while, the fishermen were like, hey, this has got to stop.
Mm-hmm.
Someone's got to... They've got to kill this kid, kill this shark, whatever. And they actually set out to do that. But he and his girlfriend or wife, whatever, they actually escaped to another island. So the story would follow from, because he was originally born, well, the story that I know, he was originally born on the big island of Hawaii, the main island, or the biggest one. And his story would follow him from there to Maui to Kamohoaliʻi to Kauai, everywhere. I mean, any other island, because he would have to keep escaping to keep away from, so he wouldn't get killed because of what he was.
Mm-hmm.
And what really got me into it, I was like, hey, that's pretty cool. This kid's walking around with a shark jaw on his back. It's like, that's pretty awesome. He turns into a shark, and then that got me into, sharks and and eventually finding teeth prehistoric sharks. So,
and what eventually happened to Nanaue was that he was eventually annihilated. To make that silly joke, what happened was they eventually captured him off of one of the islands that he had escaped to, and I can't remember. I want to say it was Molokai that they.
I think it was Maui.
It was Maui. Okay, I knew it was one of the M's, and they eventually, they caught him, and then they drug him ashore, and they basically chopped him to pieces and incinerated him because he was a killer. So
unfortunately, his mother, when he was younger, she would breastfeed him, and he started to kind of get that shark attitude from there when he was a little kid. And then eventually, because he was basically brought up on fruits and stuff like that, and his mother really tried not to give him pork. But, one day, just out of the blue, boom, he gets a taste for it. And the next thing you know, he turns into this ravenous beast that just, kills his friends, kills indiscriminately, really. I mean, but that I love that story. I don't know why, but that's like the one I remember so vividly when I was a kid, and that's stuck with me.
I think Molokai was where he escaped to, is what it was. I think that's what it was, and then Maui is where they finally killed him or something. But and I know that he supposedly became a chieftain or something of one of the islands. I have to go back and reread the whole story, but it's a very interesting story, folks, if you want to read about that, because it is the story of a shapeshifter, and a lot of native Hawaiians I used to have a roommate who was Hawaiian. His mother was Hawaiian. No, his dad was Hawaiian. His mother was Samoan. And he had stories that were passed down from his dad's family, and they told him about that story. And I remember him kind of telling me about it. And so I ended up going and researching it. It's probably been 20 years now. I should have brushed up on it before we started, but because I didn't even think we were going to talk about it. But yeah, I knew that you were going to talk about the shark people, though. And that was another thing I was going to get into about these shape-shifting shark people, because in the islands of Hawaii, according to what a couple of my friends have told me, I've had 2 friends that lived there and then one that was actually from there, and 2 of my friends that lived there for a long time. They actually, and one of them, he actually raised his family there. He passed away in 2011, but he lived there for about a decade, and he raised his family there. And he said that the natives, and he was like, this guy lived in the water like all the time, and the natives told him a lot of cool stories, and those stories were given to me. And so one of the things I was going to talk about was the shark people, because Nanaue was not the only shark person. Now, supposedly there are shapeshifter shark people, and some of the Hawaiians think, hey, this isn't just a myth. This is, these were legends that were grounded in some fact and some truth before the white settlers came and they took, the island into the modern times or whatever. And the natives believed in these stories, and they believed that you could be a practitioner of magic. And just as we get stories of dogman, werewolves, whatever, they have stories of shark people. And that sometimes when somebody gets attacked or a large shark appears in an area they're not familiar with, they're like, this could be something, and so there is some superstition surrounding it because it's a very large, powerful apex predator. And Hawaii is well known for one shark in particular, and that's a tiger shark. They are everywhere around the islands of Hawaii, and they are year round.
That's the one that's one of the ones that bumped me off my boogie board.
Yep, it's one of the main man eaters too. Tiger shark, great white. Those are 2 of the worst. Bull sharks are another one. I know that years ago when I was a young guy, I crossed the Zambezi, and the place where we crossed at was we had to go way down the river because there were hippos that were very cantankerous, and they would knock you off your boat. And if you survive the hippo attack, well, then you're in croc and shark-infested waters, and the Zambezi actually is the name that they gave the bull shark, which is a freshwater shark that lived in that river. And it was, the legend there was that no man had ever swam across that. At that point, no one had ever swam across it and lived, because they were either killed by hippos, crocs, or sharks. And so the Zambezi is actually and they call that shark, the bull shark, the Zambezi shark. And it's actually a very, very voracious predator. It has the highest level of testosterone of any animal on Earth.
Yes.
Which is a terrifying prospect that they do swim upstream. People say, oh, they don't live in fresh water. Yes, they do. And they absolutely.
They can monitor the salt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they can get it out. Yeah, they can. And it's crazy. And they have adapted to live in rivers. And a lot of times they share the river with these crocodiles, saltwater crocodiles, and so they live in brackish water.
They'll attack. Either the crocs will attack them, or they'll attack the crocs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they fight constantly.
Yeah.
And whoever's bigger wins, pretty much.
Well, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't want to go against one of those crocs. I mean, come on. I mean,
they're terrible.
That's crazy. It's just. It's like when they go up against hippos. If they swim close enough to a hippo,
mm-hmm.
Hippos will go after them. They don't okay, shark, you're outnumbered. Even one hippo against a shark you're outnumbered. Sorry, you're a dead shark.
Yeah, those hippos are in the water in Africa, and this isn't about Africa, but I'm just going to throw this out there. The hippo is considered the meanest animal in Africa if you're anywhere near the water, and then on land. You would think lion, leopard, hyena. No, it is the Cape buffalo. Cape buffalo is the absolute, hands down, the meanest animal in Africa, and the bachelor bull of that species. They are known to be the meanest animals. They are so aggressive and so angry all the time because they're so testosterone fueled Because they have to be, because they are considered a prey animal, but the bull has to be able to protect the herd. And I've seen them toss, not, in person, but I've seen them on videos tossing lions into the air, like 20 feet into the air.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, it is unreal how strong and powerful they are. And they'll kill hunters all the time. Somebody will shoot them and wound them, and it doesn't stop them. Like, you got to kill them.
Yeah, you have to. You better unload everything you have in your rifle.
Yeah. It's a very dangerous prospect going out and hunting those things. I don't understand people that go out and hunt sharks either, because like when you think about what the native Hawaiians did, like having to go out into the water, and I mean, it blows my mind, dude. I couldn't even imagine. The Pacific Islanders are a very tough people, and when you think of how they made their living back in the day, in those shark-infested waters, it's no wonder that these legends came up about the shark people. What is the name of the shark people? Is there a name for them? What are they called?
I don't think so. I've never. I mean, the only thing I could relate to that, what we call Amakua, basically our family protector, family god, and it just happens that my family is shark. So, like, when somebody passes away, their spirit goes into the shark, and you're pretty much if you go out there and you encounter that shark, they will basically protect you against all the other sharks.
Mm-hmm. And I've heard a story like that. Yeah,
but the only one I know is Nanaue. That's the only one I know of, really. I mean, I don't.
Have you heard of any stories of these sharks actually protecting someone?
I have one personal one.
Yeah. So I was going to say, let's get into that. Let's talk about that.
Well, I was a long time. This was like 90. I think it was 92 or 90. No, it was 91. 1991. Yeah, of course, I'm retired Coast Guard, so we had a get together at a beach, Barbers Point. Check it out. It's actually it's a really funny place. Anyway, I grabbed my boogie board. So a couple guys said, "Yeah, let's go boogie boarding." So we got our stuff. I put my wetsuit on and jumped in the water and started paddling out.
Explain to them boogie boarding, because that's different than surfing, right?
Yeah, the boogie board is maybe about half the size of a person, if that. So basically, you basically just skim the waves. You don't go all the way out and catch a wave all the way in. You basically at the shore there, and you just kind of ride the wave in. But for some strange reason, we went farther out than anything else. Not that far. We could still see the beach. We still see the people and everything and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, we went out there, and as I started to turn around, I started to notice, okay, I'm a little further out than I wanted to. So I started paddling back in. Next thing I know, I look down, and I see this long, dark shape just fly under me.
Oh, man.
And I'm like, it didn't process me at first. I'm thinking, okay, just keep going. Just don't look down, don't look backwards, just keep going. So as I start paddling back in, I noticed that all my friends that were with me, maybe 3 of them out there with me, they're on the beach already. I'm like, great, thanks. Next thing I know, here goes another thing. Here comes something else. It hits my right side on my leg and pushes me off the board. And I'm like, the hell was that? So the first thing I thought was, it was a shark. The first thing that popped in my mind. I went straight to the beach. I didn't look back. I didn't panic. I just went straight to the beach, picked my surfboard up, went straight to my car, and went home. So when I went home, I called my mom. I told her what happened. She's like, you know what that was, right? I'm like, no, what? She's like, they were telling you to get out of the water. He was telling you something's going to happen. And I'm not making this up. You might be able to pull it back up on the internet. I don't know but that day, there were 2 people attacked by 2 12-foot 12-foot tiger sharks.
Wow.
So my mom was like, "You're very lucky." Even my grandmother said the same thing. He's like, "You're very lucky that he was looking out for you." I went home. I jumped in the car, went straight home, and I'm like, I finally looked down on my right side where I had my wetsuit. It was a shorty wetsuit, so it's only like it's cut off at the legs. It's not like a full body wetsuit or anything because that's way too hot. So mine was only went up to the knees or down to the knees. And I looked on the left side of my wetsuit, and it looked like something had ripped it. So I definitely know that, yeah, he hit me hard enough to knock me off of that board. So, yeah, that was pretty freaky. I mean, my mom was like, "You're very lucky." I'm like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, that's the only time I ever had an experience with one of those things.
And you, Kevin, do you feel like that was what happened? Do you feel like you were attacked? I mean, you would have been attacked?
I wouldn't have been attacked. I was just warned.
And you really feel that?
Yeah. I mean, because usually when sharks attack you, especially the tiger shark, they're known for they'll bump you.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of sharks will bump you, but the tiger sharks will bump you to like, "Hey, what are you?" And then they'll come in and they'll stick their teeth on you.
Yeah. And tiger sharks, folks, in case you don't know, they are, I know some about them. They are very, they're like garbage cans of the ocean. They will eat anything. They have found a plethora of things inside of their stomach. And I know I used that word earlier in the show, plethora. That's, but they actually they found a license plate inside of one. They found turtle shells because they eat turtles. They've even found a small crocodile head inside of a tiger shark. So they will eat anything. And they have found.
Somewhere I read something about a suit of armor.
Yeah. I was going to say there was a story of them finding pieces of armor inside of a shark.
It's kind of gross, but okay, whatever.
They found a pistol. I've read that there was a pistol found inside of one of them, like an old timey pistol that somebody probably had dropped somewhere. And
see what the funny thing?
Yeah, it was like an old flintlock pistol, and they. So, I mean, these things will eat anything. I mean, they are just known to be like the garbage cans of the ocean, and so it's nothing for them to take a bite out of you.
Josh, the funny thing about tiger sharks is if you get them, like when they catch them to tag them,
mm-hmm.
usually when they turn them over or whatever, if you get them upset, they'll actually throw up their stomach.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's kind of gross. But yeah, but tiger sharks are pretty, they're the kings over there in Hawaii, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have hammerheads, you have all kinds of other sharks over there, but you know, and everyone, like I said, every once in a blue moon, there's a great white that'll come by. I mean, they don't live there, but they do visit the islands, and it's a rare sight.
I got a story for you, Kevin. I've been holding this one. I've been waiting. I haven't told it on the live stream or anything. Like I told you and Melissa that one night we were talking. I was going to tell this story on the show when we did it, but I had a friend, like I said, that lived in Hawaii for years, and he was one of my friends went out there to visit, and he ended up just staying for like several months, and I don't really count that, but I had two that lived there for over a decade each, and another one that was from there, and one of my friends that had gone out there to visit, and he was out there for several months, and he stayed, he kind of started a romantic relationship with this girl. She was a native. And this was of Oahu. He was staying over there in Oahu, or that's where she was from. And they eventually ended up going to the Big Island, and because I guess it's cheaper to stay in the Big Island. I don't know the whole whatever, but anyway, they got a place there, and they stayed for several months. And then he wanted to go back to Oregon where he was staying, and she declined. So then they split up. And then, funny enough, years later, he runs into her in Northern California, and she had ended up following a friend of hers to California, and then they ended up reconnecting. And so it's a pretty cool story. But anyway, she's native to Hawaii, and so what ended up happening, she had all these stories, and one of them was from her dad's story, and this story happened in the 70s. It was in the late 70s, and he was a surfer. And he was a native Hawaiian, and he would go out and he would, he lived in the water. That's a lot of Hawaiians. They're just born on the water. And so he had never had anything happen, But then one day he was knocked off of his surfboard, very similar to what happened to you, but it was a surfboard, and it was a tiger. And when the tiger shark knocked him off his surfboard, he got back up on his board quickly and was like, oh, I better get out of here. And so he swam for the shore. He rode the next wave in, and he told his friends, he said, man, there's like a 12-foot tiger shark out there, whatever. And one of his friends ignored him and just said, yeah, okay, whatever, and kept surfing. And about an hour later, he was hit by a great white and was, I guess, killed, the story that I was told. But it was crazy. I was just like, that's, and so when you told me that story, it just rang very similar to my friend's story of his girlfriend. I haven't talked to him in a few years. I guess they're still together, and I don't know. He's not on social media. But anyway, him and his girlfriend, relayed that story to me years and years ago. And so it's really crazy, like how the tiger shark didn't hurt him. It didn't, and then the same thing happened, but it was his grandmother. His grandmother said, oh, that's, your ancestor, and they're protecting you. So, that's why the great white attacked your friend and not you. And because
that's one of the things that I found out from a very young age was that, if your grandparents tell you something, especially in Hawaii is just steeped in legend, steeped in, all these myths and everything. And the funny thing is that, when you're a kid and you have Hawaiian grandparents, I mean, even your parents are like, yeah, you better listen to them. Mm-hmm. Just like anybody else, really. You listen to the elders, stuff like that. When they tell you stories about stuff like that, you're like, oh, yeah, right. But if you have any doubt like that and you go against it, yeah, you're probably going to get, something bad happens to you.
Yeah. And so whenever he told me that story, I just kind of thought it was a curiosity at the time. I remember I was pretty young when I heard that story, probably in my early 20s or something. And I just remember thinking, well, that's interesting. And I never really dove too deep into it. But I know that when I did my show, if you go back into the archives, folks, and it was it was Indian reservation. I think what was it called, Anthony? Indian reservation stories, horror stories, with my cousin Trey, and we talk about these. We kind of get into the skinwalkers, and I touched on just kind of briefly touched on the shark people and them, the shapeshifters and the shamanistic practices in Hawaii. The weirdest thing happened that the next night I had a nightmare, and in this nightmare, it's really it starts off kind of silly. I was at like Schlitterbahn, which is like in here in Texas, it's like a giant water park.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, and it's the largest water park in the world. And so I was going down this slide that I used to like to go down when I haven't been there in several years, but I went down this slide, and when I got to the bottom into this pool. And I automatically I realized that it wasn't just a dream. There was something to it, And so when I got into that bottom of the pool, there were all these shark men, like people looking like they had like these small legs coming off the back of them, and they had big arms. And I was like, what the heck? Instead of like the fins sticking out, they had like these big arms, and they all started to surround me, and they started vibrating around me and trying to drown me, and they were pulling me down. They weren't biting me, but they were pulling me down into the water, and I woke up gasping for air, and I was all like, what the heck? And I told my cousin, I said, dude, I must have aggravated the shamans or something, because, or whoever was listening, I don't know. And they paid me a visit or something, but it was just it was such a bizarre dream. And I went to bed not even thinking about it. And then for the next week, I was thinking about it. Every time I turn on the water, I was thinking about it. And it was just, and I told my wife, I was like, it scared the crap out of me, man, because sharks are a terrifying animal. I mean, when you go into the water, you are in their element. You're not nothing. I mean, I don't care how tough you are on the land. I don't care what you are on the land. When you go into the water, you're in their element, and that is their home, and they will literally kill you. And people are always like, oh, I know I shouldn't have been in there in the water. And they're not angry at the shark for doing what it does. And it's like, well, yeah, because, you're in their habitat. And so for me and my money, the I've been boogie boarding down in Port Aransas on a couple occasions, and I don't go too deep, but it doesn't really matter because sharks can come into the shallows pretty handily and still take you out. I mean, I've seen them come real close to shore, and I'm talking
waist deep, ankle deep, whatever they can fit into, man. They'll get into it.
And I've seen them even like beach themselves to grab prey and go back out into the yeah, it's crazy. Like I saw a shark when I was 7 years old. I think I was 7, and I was down in Port Aransas, and I was with my family, and I was out into some water that was up to my neck. And I was a little kid, okay? So, you got to realize that's probably like now me, like a little above my waist or whatever. But that water wasn't that deep. My dad was walking in the water very handily, and he was very easily, and he was ahead of me, probably like 50 feet in front of me. And something grazed against my shorts, and I felt it, like it bumped me. And when it knocked me over. I fell into the water, and I saw this eye go right by me. And when I looking back now, I'm pretty sure that was a bull shark. And I'm like, I've tried to identify it over the years to see what it was. And I'm almost positive that it was a bull shark. And so I got the heck out of the water because as a kid, I didn't know what kind of shark it was. I just knew it was a shark. And it was probably about 6 foot long. I mean, it wasn't like a giant monster shark, but for a kid, that's about as tall as my dad. My dad's a little over that, so, and my dad's a big guy. So I'm thinking, this thing scared me, and so I screamed to my dad. And then when I'm wading back into the water, there's 2 jellyfish that are bobbing right there. I'm going like, oh my gosh! And so I just got out of the water, and the rest of that trip, I was just kind of like apprehensive. And then, of course, my dad was very, he was real, he wasn't a nice guy, and so he yelled and screamed at me to get back in the water and swim with him and stuff. And I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified. And it became like a kind of a traumatic experience for me because the whole time I'm looking around, and thank God that I didn't, there was some trepidation there. I didn't go very deep or very far past my knees because I just didn't want to do it. No matter how much he screamed at me to go into the water, I just wouldn't do it because I knew that shark was there. And like I said, looking back on it, I did some research when I was like in my early teens. I went to the library and I looked up a bunch of stuff, and I found out I identified it. That's what I saw. It was a bull shark. And so it was there. And I mean, my dad's fortunate that it ate whatever it was that it was going to eat that day and didn't attack him.
Yeah. You're lucky.
We're lucky. Yeah. It's very terrifying. But anyway, so Kevin, you had this experience. And it's kind of backed up with what my friend's girlfriend's dad, happened to him. And it's very interesting that happened, that you had the same experience. And this is not uncommon. And the Hawaiians themselves, there's been many people who've told me over the years, when I've had conversations with people, that these sharks, they believe it, like the Maoris down in New Zealand. Off of the coast of New Zealand, they have some of the most aggressive great whites in the entire world, and they get very big. And the Maoris have legends of these great whites, and they have a similar belief. I had a friend of mine that was Maori, and he told me, he worked at the club for a little while, and he talked about these the same exact stories, just like you guys with the Hawaiian stories. Like they are their ancestors, and they're not to be trifled with, And one of the stories he told me. And I don't know if you've heard anything similar to this, Kevin, but one of the stories that this guy told me was that his uncle, not his uncle, his great uncle, his mother's uncle, was his mother's family did not like his dad. So there was a rift there or whatever. And so his mother's brother or his mother's uncle was kind of the patriarch of the of that side of the family. And his dad's family, they didn't like, each other or whatever. So his dad's family, he thinks it was his grandmother on his dad's side, went and put a curse on that guy. And he got attacked and eaten by a shark, like a week or two after a big falling out, because the families did not get along, and they were from 2 different like clans or whatever, I guess. And because they're natives. And so he supposedly got attacked by a shark. He got pulled off of one of these big boats that they go on, that their legs kind of hang over the sides or whatever. I don't remember how you described it to me. It's kind of like they paddle out there, and this shark just went up and grabbed him and pulled him off of it, like literally targeted him. And then that was it. And it just drug him down into the depths, and everybody was in absolute horror that this guy just got pulled down into the depths, and he never resurfaced. And everybody was like, "Oh, and there was a name that they used for it. It was like magic." But does that sound like similar, like some stories you've heard, Kevin?
Well, a lot of since my ancestors, we're actually, a lot of our cousins actually are from New Zealand too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, New Zealand. I have my cousin. He married a girl from New Zealand, so I have actual cousins that are actually Maori.
Maori,
and then,
yeah.
Then and also too, that's pretty much the start of how the Polynesians came up from New Zealand, and they went to Tahiti and all that over there, and then they eventually settled in Hawaii. So if you look at a lot of the languages that are from all these islands are really, really similar, but the stories too. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the stories followed everybody, pretty much to Hawaii. So a lot of it, is there's. I don't recall my grandmother telling me about anybody having crushes on them, but I wouldn't doubt that there was. I'm sure that happened a lot in ancient Hawaii. I'm pretty sure.
Well, there was a lot of warring too. And I know that the Big Island, eventually there was a king. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he was the one that united the islands, and there was a lot of fighting because each island.
King Kamehameha.
Kamehameha, there you go. Kamehameha, he's the one that united them, and his tribe eventually overcame the other tribes. And like you said, the Polynesian influence that came. Here's something interesting, Kevin, too. I was reading recently in an article that said that a lot of the Native Americans here in the United States actually do have an ancestry that comes from the Polynesian descent. One of this guy, he was Blackfoot, and he went and he got a DNA test, and they went back all these generations, and they found that it was Polynesian. So at some point, these Polynesians on these boats, I can't believe it's the same thing with the Vikings, like how they came on these rickety boats. I mean, you're looking at like when you look at a Viking ship or a Polynesian ship, and you look at like what they had to have gone through to be on those ships. It boggles the mind. I mean, like
there was back in the 70s, actually, I think the 70s. Yeah, 70s. Because that's when my brother's friend got killed. Anyway, there was this. I forget what it was called. The Hawaiian Polynesian Society. This guy named Herb Kane, which is Hawaii, a very good painter. He went and wanted to build an ancient double hull canoe, and it's called the Hokulea. Look up the Hokulea. It's still around, but what they did was they wanted to retrace the path that our ancestors took and do it exactly how they did it back then, with no motor, no nothing. I mean, they had radio, stuff like that, just in case something happened. But the guy that ended up, his name is Nanaue Thompson. He is a navigator, and he did it the old way of reading the stars at night, and then reading the water, the way the waves were and everything in the ocean during the daytime, to travel from island to island, from Samoa or Tahiti to Hawaii, or Hawaii to Tahiti, or back and forth, or whatever. So he had to learn how to do this, and he had to travel all the way to Tahiti to get with all these old folks that knew how to do that, to navigate by the stars. He had to learn that. So he went on to Hokulea. They actually did that, and he did that. I think they made that trip like 3 times. was there on this when the second time when they came back. I was at the beach when they came back. I actually got to meet Nanaue Thompson. He was a really cool guy. But yeah, it was really something. I mean, they how they did everything back then. Actually, the guy I said who my brother's friend who passed away. He knew him because they used to surf together when my brother goes, when they were younger. When he was younger, and what happened was the Hokulea got swamped one day and capsized. They were like thousands of miles away from anywhere, and they thought they were closer to Hawaii. So his name was Eddie Aikau. He took his surfboard. He's like, I'm gonna go and get help. So he took off on his surfboard, on his longboard. He took off, and he never made it back. So that's what happened. The first trip that he went on, and the second trip wasn't bad. The third trip wasn't bad either. But it was everything on that boat was all native. There was no electronics on it, no navigation lights, nothing. And that's how they did it, because they wanted to make it to be pure to how our ancestors did it. So it was actually pretty cool. I kind of wish I went on. I was like, can I go on? My mom was like, no.
She's like, nope.
So,
yeah.
But yeah, that was one of the things. But that's what I like about Hawaii, and that's why I like, everybody's like, when they look at me, they're like, Hawaiian. So yeah, that's what I like about being from Hawaii. It's like we have some of the coolest things there. I swear to God, man. Even the volcano goddess Pele. I mean,
Pele.
She's cool too. So
yeah. That what you just said, that there was a book I read when I was a young guy. I read a book called Kontiki, and the Kontiki story. I remember the guy's name was Thor Heyerdahl.
Something like that. Yeah, Thor.
And his name was Thor. Yeah, and he was Norwegian or Swedish or something. He was from
Norwegian.
He was Norwegian. Okay. And so he ended up, and I remember it was in the 40s. I think it was like 1946, 1947, something like that. I have a pretty good memory, and I'm trying to remember.
I remember exactly. That was one of the things that kind of got me too, because it was basically a huge raft was what he was on.
Yeah. He made like a big raft just using the materials of the time, and what he was trying to do was he was trying to prove that the Polynesians and South Americans could go back and forth with using just the during the pre-Columbian era, and he was trying to prove that they could use the materials of the time and they could have gotten here. He was trying to prove that they was an exchange of information and that there was a Polynesian influence that landed in South America, which I believe too. I believe that the Incans and the Mayans and I believe all that originally was a Polynesian descent. I never believed 100% in the Iberian Peninsula theory. I always believed that there was that land bridge. Yeah, I think there were several incursions from Asia into the Americas. But I think there were several different infusions, and I think on the east, and it's fitting that a Viking descended person would do that because they did the same thing in the northeast.
Like Easter Island, the people from Easter Island, for what was it, Easter Island? But there's an island down there that I think the Costa Ricans kind of took over, but they're actually Polynesians too.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was like I think Eastern. It's like way down there. I know it's below the equator, but it's like way down there off of, I think, South America. So there's an island down there, and the people, when I was watching this program, because they're talking about.
Are you talking about where Easter Island is? It's off the coast of Chile.
Chile, yeah,
Chile, yeah.
So the Chilean government took it over, or tried to assimilate those people into it. But there's a Polynesian connection there. So I'm sure that there's a lot of people in Chile, a lot of people that are have Polynesian descent. So yeah, I think you're right about that.
Yeah, because it's actually, I think that it's trying to think of where it's like Polynesian. I know that, but I think that like Chile is the country that claimed it or took it over or whatever. But they proved, I can't remember archaeologically, that there was like South American influence that had shown up there, and vice versa. Like there was some sort of route that they had taken back and forth. And I know the Kontiki, that was part of the whole deal, was that they were trying to prove that there was this, and they did it. They actually made landfall. It was like 4,000 miles or something. It was crazy. Like they went across the Pacific, and then they smashed into like a reef or something. And anyway, people, if you want to look it up, look up Thor Heyerdahl or Heyerdahl, however you say it. And I read this book when I was a young guy.
Yeah, I remember seeing it when I was in elementary school, reading about the Kontiki.
Yeah, that's crazy. We read the same stuff. Yeah, and so and I believe there was like a documentary that was made or something. Yeah. Yes. I never saw the documentary, but I know that I saw it when I was a kid. There was somebody talking about it or something, and I think I caught like a bit of it at my grandfather's house or something one time. Because he had cable. He would buy cable in the summertime when I'd come visit, and I didn't have cable growing up. I wasn't, one of those kids. But so when my parents finally did start, doing better and making money, and then of course that's when their marriage fell apart. But when I was a kid, we didn't have cable. We were actually a happy family before all the workaholic stuff started with my parents. But it was like, I remember being at my grandparents' house, and there was this documentary, and that may have been what it was. And it was about these guys on a raft. And so years later, I saw this book, and I kind of looked at it and just was turning the pages at the library because I was like, a book nerd as a kid. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. And so I read it, and I think I was in my teens already at that point. But it was an amazing journey, and he proved his point, that they did this. And of course, the Vikings were avid sailors, and they sailed all the way to the Americas. I know they did, because we have found now, and I know when I had Barton Nunley on the show, we talked about this, like in Kentucky and Tennessee, they've found coins from ancient Greece, Rome. They found coins from Judea. They found all kinds of Chinese anchors that go back to the Han Dynasty, and you're going like, how these people were obviously here. I mean, they came here. I mean, and some of them in very primitive rafts and boats and different types of, those Viking longships. Dude, I don't know how they do it. I mean, there's no going below deck to get away from the water. You're just there,
My cousin's husband, we were at a party once. Actually, it was a party, but his grandfather had passed away, and we had to get together at this house. And there was this oar, and it was a really big oar too. Nothing that they would have had on a outrigger canoe or a double hook canoe. This thing was huge. It was. I was a kid. I was in my teens. I don't remember exactly, but I asked my dad about it, or I asked somebody about it. I think I asked my mom or somebody, and she said to ask my cousin's husband. And it turned out to be that this was not from Hawaii. This I don't know how because they I think they dug it up somewhere in Hawaii and they kept it. But I think it was a Viking, not a paddle, but just to steer, like a tiller, to steer the ship. I think that's what it was. But this one was, I have no idea what happened to it. But yeah, I was like, there's no way, man. There's no way. How did Vikings get all the way over here with this thing?
Oh yeah.
Oh, I mean, this was a really big oar. I mean, this thing is huge. And it definitely did not come from anything that we would have, the Polynesians would have came up with. That's for sure. Because they never used those kind of things on those things.
Yeah,
they did, but not that big. But that was a story. I was like, when you brought that up, I was like, yeah, that oar that was sitting in, because they had the stage, and it was basically like a garage, and on the side of the garage. It was a really big garage. They had this thing hanging up. I'm like, wow.
Okay, so here's the thing. We're going to switch course here a little bit, and we're going to talk about some cryptid stuff that goes on in Hawaii. I got a story that was told to me by somebody who lived there. He was actually a waiter that just waited on us, and he was Hawaiian, and he actually told us a story about a cryptid. But okay, folks, so that's all the time we're going to have for tonight with Kevin Pinay. We're going to come back next Friday. And we're gonna finish up, and we're gonna talk about some interesting things, the legends and folklore of Hawaii. We're gonna continue with that, and then we're going to talk some Bigfoot and some cryptids. So tune in next week when we do it all again. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and go to our YouTube on Tuesdays. We do the live stream. Don't miss it. It's 7:30 to 8. You won't be disappointed. Thank you for listening, and good night.